Well, first of all, welcome to the Way Say podcast. I first, I did just mention to you guys, both of you guys are, all of you, all of us went to Arson College. And, well, Cindy, you're from UReport, and mentioned in a previous episode, you guys deal with a lot of youth topics and a lot of the discussions that y'all deal with stats and so on and so on. And Jumar, you have your own show called Secretly Insightful Talk, which I
Mm.
mean I've been tuning in every time I can, and you how you do with a lot of serious topics, and I figured that both you report and what you do would be adequate for the discussion that I'm gonna bring up for today, which I both told you guys both about, which is segregation in Barbados.
Mm.
And I figured that since all of us at least deal with some sort of youth um, genre in what we do, that is something that we do see amongst youth as well. So first of all, I mean, because there are a lot of subtopics that there are when you're talking about and dealing with segregation. But what do you think well, first of all, do you think that is something that is involved in Barbados, and do you see it just only here, or do you see it on overseas? Do you see it as impactful here? So I guess whoever wants to go first
Let
can
me say me first. Please.
okay.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, Segregation, like you said, is a very complex issue. Yeah, it covers a lot of things, and it appears in a bunch of different ways. And I think in a context like Barbados, where you have um, the majority of the population is people of color, it
Mm-hmm.
presents differently than somewhere, say like in Europe or America, where
Mm-hmm.
people of color are actually in the minority. But yes, I do see segregation in Barbados, um, and yeah, overseas. But they do present a little differently to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My feelings are along the same lines, but obviously, given that I've done a lot of traveling due to my sport and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to see a lot in the Caribbean and see how like in Guyana, for example, you will have the Indians and the blacks and the there's a lot of different discrepancies and stuff throughout the Caribbean, but
Mm-hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, throughout the world, segregation is a huge deal. Initially when you came to me, sorry, you brought up the issue on. I brought up the issue on if you
Race.
were specifying race and right,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
exactly. But I was looking at class as well, classism and stuff like that. Obviously, for the most part, we still think we could still look at classism and race going hand in hand because
Mm-hmm.
obviously when you see white for your brown people, you would assume that they are in a certain class, and you
Yeah.
know, and that is very evident in the Caribbean, in Barbados, in the world, and it still will continue like that for a while to come. So, you know, hopefully things will change, but there's a lot that we could discuss here today.
Yeah. Well, before I even do get to the what both of you think about how we can go forward, I know that as I was discussing in a certain class this week or week before, that we in Barbados see segregation a lot from as early as common entrance. And a lot of people may not see it like that, but it really is because we're then separating a lot of children from who's brighter and who's not, and we all put a lot of impact and the parents put a lot of pressure on children from such a young age, just to get to one school. And you see people sometimes fall down or fall short, just in one exam, but they may be doing well throughout the course of their primary school um, life. So let me start there with both of you guys. You yourselves, do you think that that's something that you saw personally? Did that impact you? Because I mean, we ended up all at what is known as what the top tier or the hierarchy of schools in Barbados. But do you think that that's something that should be like removed, where you don't see that anymore? Because I know that's a talk amongst a lot of Barbadians now, is should there be removal of the conventions?
Go ahead,
Um,
Jemima.
um, I have my feelings towards the common entrance. Now, I understand completely the issue of the segregation and stuff. Like I definitely understand on that. Obviously, leaving Harrison College and going to BCC and now IUE, and I can see how over time things change and stuff. But when we specify the common interest, my question is what is gonna be the alternative to that? And I've heard people say, just place the children in schools based on zoning and blah blah blah. But three
Mm-hmm.
of us would know that within the walls of Harrison College, there's a certain level that you have to meet, regardless of what people think.
Mm-hmm.
You come to the school, obviously you're expected to perform a certain way. Certain teachers are gonna act that way. I remember multiple times teachers saying you are Harrison College and you can't, make this criteria, you can't meet this level, da 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 da. Now, I would not put a student who has passed for a quote unquote lower school in that environment to then get cut down and have their legs cut around them and not be able to prosper in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the common interest itself at that particular age, 11, 10, 11, it does create like a psychological issue for our children because they don't see themselves as proper or as good when they pass for what we consider lesser school. Obviously, for three of us, our common interest, we would be the most happy in the room, one happiest in the room, because
Mm-hmm.
we get results, we feel good, you know, after down Crampton Street, and we feel fantastic knowing that we can be seen as one in the upper echelon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for those who have gone to a lower school now, I feel like using that result as motivation can make you better in the long run because as much as you might have been seen as the better at that point in time when you're 10, 11, as you said, there's only one exam. It
Mm-hmm.
can make you or break you. But the way you approach it and the way that you move forward would really determine the value that you have in the world at large. Because as much as you go into this school or that school, it's really what you bring to the world in the end. You know what I mean? So I've come, as I said, I came from Harrison College, I went to BCC. I've had people that have been from CP. They've come, they're in the same law class as me. They're doing just as well or better than me. And they're making moves. They don't look like, they fall into the wayside or anything like that. And I don't know, like I have my feelings on the comments, as I said. I don't know. Everybody learns at a different speed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to look at. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really just how you handle the situation
Mm-hmm.
and how you use it. And I must say, people that sorry for talking too much, but
No, it's fine.
people that have gone to lower schools, we tend to see them blasting people who go to the higher schools because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you feel better than whatever. But we,
Mm-hmm.
three of us say we consider we fairly grounded, right? I can say so.
Mm-hmm.
We can say so.
Yeah.
We can agree on that. But I don't particularly see, I know one or two that who will laugh and say, oh, you went to this school, that school. But I don't feel that that is rampant throughout Harrison College, I should say, because we got Harrison College, we know what happened in
Mm-hmm.
Harrison College. I can't say that that has happened throughout Harrison College. But people outside of Harrison College tend to be ignorant of what is actually happening and say, oh, we think of ourselves as better or whatever. That's not the case. It's a school just like every other school, but at the same time, we meet a certain standard. We've been privileged enough to follow on in the footsteps of great people and a lot of high ranking officials and. So I don't know. The common entrance is a lot to look at to pick apart, but segregation in that sense is definitely something that rings true and I can't deny it's very much there.
Well, okay. Yeah, I understood about that. So, seeing that you guys, Cindy, are at your report deal with a lot of stats and stuff, is that something that you guys could look into to make people more aware of? To because even mind you, I guess I mean because we, as you said, we all went to Harrison College, so we know even within the walls of Harrison College there is segregation.
Agreed.
You
Yep.
do see it, and so how can you guys at your report, Cindy, make that a little bit more clear for a lot of people to cut down on that, to make people be able to bond and be together as opposed to just separating even at the highest level?
Well, I want to start by saying that common entrance is like Jumar said, a lot to unpack. And I think the problem of segregation within the realm of common entrance is an attitude thing, um, is very much an attitude thing. And I say that because when you look at what common entrance is, um, it is essentially a ranking system of brightest to less bright, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that mindset, it creates a separation, it creates a hierarchy of that is not productive. Now if we were to, like, I don't really have, theoretically speaking, because I kind of sort of understand the theory of common entrance. Theoretically speaking, it's supposed to sort students into schools based on what their aptitude is. So if I'm more apt to do something that's technical, I might end up at a school that is, I'm supposed to end up at a school that is more technically inclined or more capable of honing my technical skills. But the problem is that we've become ingrained in this school of thought that there is a school that is bright, a top school because of academic prowess, and a low school because they don't focus as much on academics. Where, like Jumar said, is so important that at the end of the day, it comes down to what you bring to the table and what your contribution to the world is. And the world needs academic minds like doctors and lawyers, that's true, but it also needs people to do plumbing, people to do mason work, etc., etc., etc. And every job in that sense is important. But because we've thought for so long that is about academics or is about being in high paying professions or high prestige professions, then we've come down to segregating it in, bright to not so bright. Um, and then when it comes to, your report, it becomes a task for us to then show people, like you said, what the rationale for something like common entrance should be or would be, and ascertain what those attitudes are right now. Um, because like like you said, we went to what is considered the top school in the island, but it's the top school by one version of the ranking. There's so many different things you can rank schools based on. If it is the top sporting school, that might be a different school. If it may be the top school for performing arts, that might be a different school. Technical education, same thing. Um, so using tools like UReport is really to figure out what the mindset of young people is towards what is going on within the school. And like you said, gathering the ideas of young people, because that's where UReport shines. We're supposed to gather the ideas and the thoughts of young people, and then because we're backed by something like UNICEF, use those ideas to inform policy, to inform the Ministry of Education. Look, hey, this is how people view common entrance. This is how young people view common entrance. This is what you're doing to young people with the concept that common entrance is currently built on. How do we then address that concept and make it better? Or, subvert it entirely and create something new that is more conducive to, students' confidence in themselves.
Well, I mean, rightly so. I mean, I do imagine that that would be quite a task, at least for you guys, because there are a number of secondary schools, and to get all the stats with that would be quite
Oh
challenging.
yeah.
Yeah, it would be. But I want to actually come back to what we were speaking about, especially, and bring up the race topic as you were talking about, Jamar. Um,
Mm.
and I mean, I know, like, it's not only for us, but I know this is a saying where you have like a more of a white school and a more of a black school and more ghetto school and all of that, right? And
Yes.
Yeah.
you could even argue to say that those things are associated with the Queen's College, the Harrison College, the St. Michael, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to race, in between those schools, you talk to the white people, and the white people blend with the black people, and so on and so on. And as you rightfully said, as you get to BCC and UE, those things tend to diminish,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
just disappear.
they
Yeah.
disappear, right? But
Everybody's
during that,
everybody.
everybody's
It's
everybody,
true.
and you don't care. You're knocking shoulders with everybody else. But at that secondary school level and primary school level, how impactful is it? Because I mean, just last year, we saw with the whole Black Lives Matter thing and everything with race, that was a big thing. So a lot of people were even saying that, oh, there's not racism in Barbados or whatever it is, but that
Uh,
is segregation as well. So where do you guys see that in our schools and outside of schools, especially with segregation of race in Barbados?
okay. Looking at primary to secondary, right? I think that depending on where you put your child, it breeds a certain mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the black boy, the black child, whatever, privileged enough to be able to go to like, one of the private schools higher up, so enterprise level, up from there, Providence level, you might be able to, well, sorry, not might be able to, you're placed in a position where
Mm-hmm.
you are interacting with, white individuals, white browns, people with money, essentially, to it really breeds a mindset within yourself that you don't see a problem with the white people, you know? I, all right, let me see if we can put this in a more appropriate way where I get carried
Mm-hmm.
away. Okay, so we will call a black person that spends most of his time with a white man a Oreo simply
Mm-hmm.
because he is black on the inside and ass white. Yeah, black on the outside, sorry, black ass white on the inside. That mindset is not because he wants that for himself, because that's what he knows naturally. Now, when you see Black Lives Matter come, you will hear those people, those black individuals, unless they have, moved on from that point, they might argue that, oh, all lives matter, or you remember there was a whole thing with people not understanding what the significance of Black Lives Matter was, and then trying to say, oh, well, the white man lives matter. So that's not the point. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at this point in time, there's a movement, there's a certain understanding. Black lives are being disrespected. Black people are being disrespected. Black people are being put in a position where we cannot feel that we're being heard. A variety of things. It's been going on for a long time. From the civil rights movement all up to now. We had a whole problem with that. For the white man, though, it's like there ain't much for them to say, but they argue we in Barbados. This is a primarily black country. We feel like we've been around black people not long enough. Who are you to call me racist, or who are you to call me, you know, like a suppressor or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Now, not to get carried away, but I feel like in primary schools, in secondary schools, you can't really stop the function of what the schools have going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in terms of secondary schools alone, for at one point you would be hearing SMS is the place for white people and the public school for white people and white browns. So that's where they would feel comfortable. That's where most of them would be, whatever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then obviously you would see Harrison College, then Queens College. And that's a hierarchy because the white browns or white people would like their students to be at the best school regardless. Um, I don't believe that there is necessarily an issue with what is happening as of today with the way that some of the more modern teenagers and stuff think. A few of them, bad apples, whatever. But at the same time, I think we're making a slight change in trajectory where they where we now see that there's a level of understanding, there's a level of acceptance and stuff. I I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that we're making a move now, at least what I've seen since we left school. I don't know if things have changed since we left school. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But from what we had, I think that we had a certain sense of unity at our college with
Mm-hmm.
most of the people. There was a certain sense of understanding throughout the school. It wasn't really a lot of that. I don't know if in your years you have to tell me, but in my year, there was a different vibe. There wasn't really any segregation. There wasn't any of that. Well, the mindset that the people would have had, the black individuals that would have had that started at a private school with the white people that they brought to Harrison College, few of them have changed fundamentally from what they were in the beginning. When they came to Harrison College, they saw themselves as um, accepted as one of the white people, as one in that crowd, and they still continue to be like that. Very few of them have changed paths from then to now, and they will continue that. That is where you build your fundamentals at primary school. That's really it. It's very few people change the way that they carry out their lives and the way they practice everyday activities and the way they live based on things that they experience throughout the course of their life. Especially if you have more, especially if you're able to you know do as the others do and do as whatever. You can do more. You can have your own vehicle. You can have all this. You can have all that. You have it. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
you feel more accepted in the crowd where other people have it. Whereas it's very unlikely that you come into a black crowd unless you find a very specific black group and you can find the black people who have all these things that you have as well. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess it's really a psychological thing. It's a nurturing thing as well. So I can't fault a black man that has been in that particular society for acting the way he does. But at the same time, I don't know. It's really just as a social thing, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Give me 1 second.
Mm.
And I'm glad that you actually said so, Jumor, because you actually just mentioned it because that is something that I did not, and I purposely did not tell you both about it. Because I know that all three of us went to Harrison College, and I know that as I just said earlier, that there's segregation at Harrison College itself. And I noticed it from watching your graduating class, especially. Cindy, you have to tell me because I have very little memory of Fabian and your
Fair,
year per
fair.
se. But when it comes to, and this then leads into my topic with segregation at a gender level now.
Mm,
And I'll ask you this was especially Cindy,
mm-hmm,
because in my year there was a lot of segregation, not amongst the boys, because and I guess you could vouch for this as well, Jumar, because I mean the boys from your year as well. The boys tend to stick together, and
Yeah.
play the football, the road tennis, whatever it is. But there's a lot of segregation amongst the girls in our year. And it means there's segregation as well because there were different groups, and that really ultimately affected our graduating class, and we were affected by it a lot in terms of our graduation plans and etc. etc. I mean, you could hear stories. I don't know if you heard stories about our year or whatever it is, Jumar, but you
What
know,
are two?
on our right. So so Cindy, you could talk to me. Why is it that you think that there's a lot of segregation at the gender level with women, especially? And you always hear it as well on social media where they say that women bring down women and not really uplifting women and such and such. So why is it that that is something that's more common uh, with women? Why?
um, that see, segregate is such an intersectional question because so much stuff plays into that,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in my experience, because I went to a private primary school
Mm-hmm.
that was majority black. Any. I don't think I had any white people in my year actually in primary school. So there was a lot of stuff. First of all, going to public secondary school was threw me for a loop because I was like, don't know. Biggest class I ever had was 20 people,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my graduating class and stuff like that at primary school.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right in saying that it seems like a lot more segregation kind of happens with um the the girls, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. I feel like I have always been kind of oddly out of step with pretty much everybody my age. So like I had a lot of time to sit down and really like observe what was going on in my year and stuff like that. And you're right. The guys is play to get it indiscriminately, go out to get it indiscriminately. Don't really matter what you look like. It's just like we as friends, we cool vibes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's like this theory, um, and I don't know the basis for it off the top of my head, but there's a way in which women are supposedly more conservative than our men. Not
Mm-hmm.
sure why that is. I'm not sure what like I said, what the academic basis for that is. But the whole concept of it is like along the lines of what Jumar said. If you went to a school that was majority white folk, and you're a person, you're a girl of color, and you have a friend core by the time that you carry into high school, secondary school, then it's likely that you're going to kind of stick to your guns because that's what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the guys somehow always seem to like branch out because like everybody's do the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Girls kind of like, okay, well, I do ballet. These people are in my ballet class, so I'm gonna stick
Mm-hmm.
with people that are in my ballet class because I know his vibes. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in my year, I feel like there was segregation in my year in terms of like racial segregation as well. I think it might have been a bit more pronounced than I'd seen from other years, like even years above me and stuff like that. I'm not sure what years below me. Y'all would have to tell me, but it was like there were fairly visceral markers of separation. Like there was a group of like all the non people of color students kind of just had their own thing going on, and you know every now and again somebody would, a person of color like me would like pass through, but it was not a case where we were like super involved in their lives or anything like that. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us didn't go to their ballet recitals or you know like their beach hangouts or whatever. It was just, and it was just a thing that happened. Like it wasn't because we were actively making an effort to separate. It's just that's what people were accustomed to, and that's what they kept doing.
Okay. And I mean, as much as you could look at the positive and negatives of segregation, both of y'all, would you say that,
Yeah.
especially at, well, because we know that there's the issues with common entrance, but at the secondary school and going forward, because it does disappear and diminish, is it really that much of a negative? Because people do naturally will stick to with certain people, and you will have friend groups, you will have these different sets of people. You will not like everybody, and everybody will not like you. So, is it a negative thing? Before I do move on to another thing that I'm going to come back to, do you see it really as a negative or a positive
At the secondary level,
at any level, really?
um, I'd have to argue that at some points it becomes negative, especially when you're getting into like the young adulthood of it all and job
Mm-hmm.
searching and stuff like that. Because if you look at our community here in Barbados, the way it works is that very often people of color will struggle to get work, to find work, and people and white persons will not, or
Mm-hmm.
people who are lighter skinned will not will not struggle nearly as much. Not to say that in a struggle for everybody, but it is more of a struggle for a black kid than a white kid or a high brown kid, as we would say. um so it becomes a problem somewhere, but at the same time I suppose it does kind of have positives in the sense that there's um space given to us as people of color to really like sit down with our culture and decide, you know, and work through it and navigate our identities without having, I don't want to say like pollution because
Mm-hmm.
that's like that's a bad, I don't mean it in a bad way, but like outside
Understand.
influence.
Yeah.
Right,
I
outside
understand.
influence. Yeah.
Right. I can't help but say that women just tend to be a little more combative to some extent, right? It can have a lot to do with the way that not saying that men can't do it, because men can. I find men in my year have done it many times for little frivolous reasons that I could never understand.
Mm-hmm.
But women, I think a lot of the white women, I think they just have like a different core of values and stuff, and a different way that live their lives in comparison to the blacks. And then when as Christian would have said, when it comes to things of planning and when you gotta do certain things a certain way, one might not like it, the other might like it, you know. And I don't think that that's necessarily an issue, but I just find that men tend to just take care of the issue in a more balanced way. I guess I could say so. Women, I don't know. I guess like our women just want things to be the want take. Not all, some might want things a specific way. But I guess that could cause an issue. But I find men like that as well. I find women the same way, but I just find a little more men. Sorry, women tend to be a little more blows when it comes to certain things. I really think I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen it outside of Barbados, but I don't live anywhere else, so I can't swear that it happens. That it doesn't happen. Sorry, I don't know. But
Well, yeah,
women,
we definitely can only speak for Barbados. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I can only speak for Barbados, but I just find that women, Bajan women, just sometimes it's just find it so easy to cry on one another. Like it's just and I just don't understand. Like sometimes it's that I see it on Twitter, I see it, wherever you could voice your opinions on the situation for nothing like the frivolous things. And I don't know, man. Men do it sometimes, but women, I don't
I
know,
will
boy.
I will argue just a little bit. I don't know if that adds to the point or not. Like that, I don't know if that adds to your argument or not. But
Mm.
I will argue a little bit and say Bajans in general fairly
Yeah,
combative as it begins with.
All right, y'all get y'all get
Wait,
spoiled before. Let me get back
no,
into the
no.
episode, yeah, because I want to actually talk about this. I want to talk about this for sure. So actually, I will actually continue from here
Go ahead,
actually,
go ahead.
and
Mhm.
say that is just off camera because it's not I would not include what was just said and whatever it is, but
mm,
um, and then I'll let you go, Cindy. Is definitely that as you were just about to get into is that Barbados does tend to credit on a lot of things, and I tend to
yeah.
and you look at countries in other countries in the region, you hear them a lot more together, but Barbadians especially do tend to be a little bit segregated, where you have people that would support their own friends, and if they got a small business, they can support that small business. They ain't going to support the next business, but it's only if you doing really well and you happen to make it that you have your small business is nationwide, then you're doing well. But why is it that that Barbadians are really that segregated? Why are we crying on each other and not pulling each other up? So I'll
Now,
let you go, Cindy.
now you see, I'm about to flex some history muscles on this because
Go ahead.
like a lot of the reasons for segregation of any type and the intensity of the segregation in Barbados is can be like the answers can be found in our history. Barbados is the only Caribbean island of all the islands in Caribbean, the only one that was colonized by one power for the entirety of colonialism. We
Mm.
were colonized uninterrupted by the English, right? The British. And then, because we're so small, even after emancipation, there was only so much, if anything at all, that the newly freed people could do besides go back to the plantation because all the land was used up pretty much. And because of that, it means that we had a systematic, yes, everybody in the Caribbean had like a systematic dismantling of Afrocentrism and like of African identity and all that sort of stuff. Agreed. But we didn't have anywhere to run because we're too small. We didn't have anywhere to run after emancipation because we're too small. And we had the same people crying we down for 400 years, 300 years.
Mhm.
I'm not that good at math. Don't shame me. So because of that, and the reason that segregation is such a deep seated issue here in Barbados, the reason that we can't really unite on nothing unless it's to cry down somebody else for shitting on Barbados, because sorry, for crapping on Barbados, because I mean, like the only thing that you cannot do to all Bajans, the only thing you could do, it seems so far, to unite Bajans is to insult Bajans. Like Bajans be like, wait, hold on, you insulting Barbados? Like only Barbadians get to do that. But
Mhm.
we are that segregated because it has been so like the level of colonization that we faced was so rampant and so intense and so
Yeah.
uninterrupted. So when we talk about stuff like why is this segregation this way, why can't um, people in Barbados rally for an issue, why are there so many naysayers, whether it is naysaying women crying down each other, whether it is Bajans and the COVID updates crying down Mia, whatever it is, whatever the case may be, is a lot of it can be found in our history. You know what I'm saying? And we're at a point now, especially coming off of the Black Lives Matter movement resparking, so to speak, and then the Nelson Must Fall movement last year. All of that puts us on this trajectory now where we're even more separated, but it's, I think, a more productive separation, simply because young people, especially because you look at how many young people at the forefront of those movements,
Mhm.
um, you would see that it's young people who are having these conversations, who are talking about segregation, who are trying to figure out why stuff is the way it is, who are trying to figure out how to affect productive change and actually build up Barbados. And it's more often than not, but not always, more often than not, older people, older generations who are like, this is the way things have always been. Why are we trying to change it?
Mm-hmm.
So when I
I'm
say
glad you said that.
segregation is an intersectional and complex issue,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could go, like you said, we could go on and on and on and on, and there's so many different facets of it that we can address. But all of
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to the socio-historical context that Barbados comes out of.
I'm glad you said that because that is something that I somewhat touched on in a previous episode where we was talking about parenting, where sometimes parents always say, and I don't know if you guys have heard, is like, oh, it was done this way, so it should be that way done this way,
Yeah.
and there's no other new way to do it, and so such
Mm-hmm.
and such. But to just start to move towards the end of this episode, in turn we dealt with class, we dealt with race, we dealt with gender. So now, as you just rightfully said, is a lot of youth that are talking about it, and that's the whole basis of UReport, and you, Jamar, are getting the views on your secretly insightful talk. So how now can we move forward? What are the solutions? How can we cut down on this? Because you then find it that if Bajans aren't seeing change, they're up and left. You know, you're gone. Can't do it anymore, and you leave,
Oh
and
yeah.
and that's it. But
Oh,
how can we know? How can we know as youth build back up Barbados really? Because what's going to be the solution?
Mm.
so they must hear our answer on that one for sure. You give my opinion,
both,
but if you just look, you have an answer for me that I need to hear.
both y'all can have a say on it. So because
Yeah,
we have
definitely.
different solutions. Yeah. So yeah,
Hmm.
Cindy, go ahead.
um, the most broad and general version of that answer is young people continuing to lead the charge,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
because we are the people who are going to lead the country, who are going to keep the country running, who are going to inherit the country, and we want to inherit a country that in fall to nothingness, right? So like you said, I'm involved in UReport, and the the whole point of UReport is to get the ideas and opinions of youth all in one place for policymakers. How do we affect change in the policies that are neo-colonial, that are oppressive, that are suppressing or marginalizing groups of people in our society? These are the
Mhm.
questions we need to start asking. And we as young, let's say woke young people, so to speak, need to start like rallying our peers and saying, yo, this is a problem that we all have. How are we going to change it? And how are we going to affect change? How are we going to make older people than us, or people who don't believe, listen? How are we going to make them change their minds?
Mm-hmm.
All that sort of stuff goes into to affecting change, and it's by no stretch of imagination anything easy,
Mhm.
because if you
Okay.
look at, and a really great example is the decommissioning of the Nelson statue.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the history of trying to get that statue removed from Hero Square, Hero Square, I think, was renamed. I don't want to get it wrong. I think Hero Square was renamed to Hero Square in like the early 1990s or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
And from couple years after independence, so the late 1960s, early 1970s, politicians, artists like Gabby and Aja and all these people, the Commission for Pan African Affairs, that's my name. The Pan Africanists in Barbados, let's just call it, because I can't remember the name of it. David Commistrong. All these people were like, why is this white man, this white colonizer, standing in what is supposed to be our hero square? How do we reclaim spaces that we as Barbadian people have allowed to be polluted by colonial power? And that doesn't just mean removing statues, that means removing other symbols, that means addressing policies and laws that don't account for the rights of our people or don't acknowledge the rights of our people, because we still have so many archaic laws that make like no sense in like a modern day context for people of color. How do we fashion this society into something where um the black people who make it, or people of color who make up the majority, are actually thriving and not struggling all the time? How do we address the issues for our working class, for our poor people, all of this stuff? And the answer to it is that youth have been doing the work forever. Obviously we're gonna need some older folks, some adultier adults, so to speak, to kind of help us meander through the minutia of it, the logistics of it. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who are capable of making a change, who are willing to make the change, and who have all the fight left in them to make the change.
That was a good one, I must say. Um, appreciate that. Uh, my feelings are not far from that. You know, I personally, um, politics for me is where my life is, really based right now. Politics and all, right? I feel like the ignorance towards politics and the way that young people approach politics as of today is completely different from what it would have been at, whenever it was before us. As you said, older folk tend to stick to the guns and stick to what they know and, support one party until they die and, you know, just the regular, I ain't moving from here type of attitude. Now, younger people, I think, are more flexible, right? We definitely, not everybody is going to know, but that's why we have people like us that can educate, spread the word. We could definitely balance a level of, you know, I should say leniency and seriousness and resonate with the crowd, the younger crowd, so that the people that don't know understand the fundamentals of what was and what should be going forward, right?
Mhm.
So that change is really on the hands of the young people. That is something that we need to do. We need to make a move on. Obviously, the older folk, they're gonna pass away and move on up. They're gonna be gone. So we have to take control. We have to set ourselves at a standard where we are not like them. We need to figure out because we can smile now and say the BLP greatest party ever to exist and all these things. But at the core of Barbados, there are certain things that we need. There's certain things that need to be done. There's certain things that need to change. And the only way to change it is not by quarreling on Twitter and telling me Motley that she's not doing the right thing and da 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 da. Because I really feel like, blasting the prime minister all the time ain't really help. Because
It's
it's
really
not
not.
gonna. So it's just the way that we approach things and the way we move forward. There's by no means should the DLP have zero seats. By no means should the DLP have won nothing. That's genuinely my opinion. As much as Myanmar probably the best one of the best prime ministers that I have
Still
in
need
recent.
opposition. That's how checks and
But
balances work. Yep.
exactly, you need some checks and balances. As much as Myanmar is a great prime minister, I appreciate everything she's done. I appreciate the way she's carrying the country. I appreciate the direction that she's moving in. She has really put us on a pedestal right now. But really and truly, that should not have been. That should not have been. So whatever. Point is, the core of what I'm saying here right now is that we need to educate the apathetic crowd. You need to
Yep.
figure out you need to figure out how to resonate with the younger people and to let them know that we should just be saying, oh, both parties are the same, so we can never get out of this hole that we in. We should not be thinking that. There needs to be a way to figure out, you know, educate them, let them know we could change, we could do better, we could move on up. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be. I mean, recently, let me just share a short story. I was in class, a woman probably in her 40s, whatever. Obviously 20, like 20 years younger than she. She telling the class, "Oh, the tourists here that come here are missing what Barbados was in 1960." She's saying that we should not integrate, we should not move on, we should not build up. I was baffled beyond. I won my mouth because I said to myself, you want Barbados to be stuck back in the past,
There's a black
not
woman.
a black woman.
My
Lost,
God.
lost, lost. I said to her, well, my lecturer got her before me, but I said to her, Mom, you're real lost. You need to get yourself together. This is what they are thinking. This is where they're thinking. They don't want to see a change. They want us to relate on others. They want us to do this one.
Yeah.
Listen, we need to change the fundamentals of what we have in Barbados right now and move forward. That is the truth.
Yep.
That is the truth. That's all. And Cindy would have said everything else I needed to say, so I don't have to make much more comment on that.
Yeah.
So
Like you said, it starts with educating the apathetic, and it's I think it's twofold. It's educate the apathetic and empower the youth. I think that's the track we're going along,
yeah,
because first of all, it's not going to change if people kind of stand in the way of progress, but it's
Mhm.
also not going to change if people don't know how to change it. So
correct.
yeah.
Correct.
Well, I mean, as we we all discussed and said, there's so much more topics that we could go into. I mean, the segregation in Barbados could be an ending,
Yeah,
Mhm.
boy.
but
A
we don't have that
PhD
much time,
dissertation right
and
there.
yeah, we don't have that much time because we could be going on till about 6 o'clock or past, and
True.
this topic will continue to go on amongst youth and old people and continue for generations and generations. But I will thank you both for joining me today on What You Say podcast. I will let you all guys know that it was much appreciated to hear your views and thoughts about the entire topic. Guys that are watching, Cindy's from UReport. This UReport descriptions will be in the description, as well as Jumar's show, Secretly Insightful Talk. Go and check out all of them because he just had one recently based on men, and oh lord,
Oh, lost.
and but he's got some real interesting topics, guys. So go and check those out as well. Go and check out your report to see when they update recently, because I mean, just recently they had a poll that was up and they put some good stuff on their Instagram stories. So go and look at their page and follow them. Again, thank you. If there's anything else that you do need to promote, do go ahead now.
I just saying might get one or both of you are one of you to come and do a little episode with me one of these days. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna start doing this on lives. I think on my use on the Instagram. Sorry. So if you could pass through and voice an opinion or two, it'd be appreciated. Uh,
Yeah.
I really live with the crowd. I love to hear different opinions and different views and stuff. So I would definitely encourage you to come and say a thing or two.
One of the things I want to say is that UReport is made up of, I will say, like young people, obviously, but we are all on the steering committee. All of us are involved in our own veins of youth advocacy. So when you check out UReport, make sure to check out all the people that are involved on the UReport team and the things that we are doing to try and affect change in our communities. We have people that are involved with disabilities and people that are involved with the homeless and other marginalized groups within the society, and people who are using their passion and their advocacy and their activism, and in some cases their art, to help educate, like we were talking about, help educate the youth, help empower the youth with their own voices. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Again, thank you guys for joining me on Wednesday podcast. See you guys later for yet another episode.